What if one man's gut feeling stood between you and the end of the world? Meet Stanislav Petrov, the Soviet officer who, on a tense night in 1983, stared down a blinking screen screaming "nuclear attack" and chose to call it a bluff. It was the Cold War's peak, US and Soviet missiles primed, paranoia thick enough to choke on, and 5 supposed US nukes were incoming. One wrong move, and boom, mutually assured destruction. But Petrov, alone in a bunker, defied orders, betting everything on a hunch that saved us all from a fiery end. No missiles, just clouds fooling a glitchy system. This isn't sci-fi. It's the real unsung story of how humanity dodged apocalypse, thanks to a single skeptic who didn't push the button. Buckle up for a wild ride into the night the world almost ended. In the early hours of September 26, 1983, the world teetered on the brink of annihilation, and Stanislav Petrov, a Soviet lieutenant colonel, found himself at the epicenter of the storm. Stationed in a bunker near Moscow, Petrov was the officer on duty for the Soviet Air Defense Forces, tasked with monitoring the early warning network for signs of a nuclear strike, a job that carried the weight of humanity's survival during the Cold War's fever pitch. Born in 1939 in Soviet Russia and a 1972 graduate of Kiev's Higher Engineering Radio-Technical College, Petrov was no stranger to discipline, but nothing could have prepared him for what unfolded that night. At 38, he was a seasoned soldier, yet the blaring siren and flashing computer screen shook him to his core. The system screamed that 5 intercontinental ballistic missiles were hurtling from the United States toward Russia. Frozen with terror, he watched as the alerts piled up. One missile, then another, then 3 more, each a harbinger of a violent end to the world he called home. This was no drill. The Cold War had primed both superpowers for mutual destruction, with tension so taut that a single spark could ignite a global inferno. Petrov's official orders were clear. Report any strike immediately to the top brass, who'd have mere minutes to launch a counter-offensive, ensuring the enemy went down with them. The stakes were apocalyptic. 5 missiles could signal the start of a first strike, capable of obliterating Soviet cities before retaliation could even begin. Yet, as the clock ticked, Petrov hesitated, his mind racing. This wasn't just a technical glitch to him, it was a moment where one decision could doom mankind. The system insisted the threat was real, but something gnawed at him. A flicker of doubt amid the chaos. Little did he know, his next move would determine whether the world woke up to another day or vanished in a nuclear blaze. A choice that would quietly crown him an unsung hero in a story hidden for decades. The night of September 26, 1983, when Stanislav Petrov faced the blaring alerts of a supposed US nuclear strike, was steeped in the suffocating tension of the Cold War, a global standoff where the stakes couldn't have been higher. Born in 1939 in Soviet Russia, Petrov had risen to lieutenant colonel by 1983, stationed in a bunker near Moscow to oversee the Soviet early warning system, a linchpin in a world teetering on the edge of annihilation. This wasn't just any era. It was a time when the United States and Soviet Union, bitter rivals in an escalating arms race, lived under the shadow of mutually assured destruction. MAD. Nuclear weapons had rewritten the rules of war, offering instant victory to whoever struck first, yet promising total ruin if both sides unleashed their arsenals. By the 1980s, both nations had amassed enough nukes to obliterate each other many times over, stationing them on submarines, missiles, and in neighboring countries, creating a hair-trigger balance where neither could afford to blink. The concept of MAD meant that any launch would spark immediate retaliation, dragging the world into a radioactive abyss, a reality so dire that Petrov's bunker duty carried the weight of planetary survival. The superpower's paranoia fueled a race for first strike capability. the ability to wipe out the enemy before they could respond, making detection systems as critical as the missiles themselves. A glitch or misstep could hand the adversary the upper hand, turning existence into a game of preemptive brinkmanship. Both sides believed the other might strike first, not out of desire, but fear. If you thought the enemy was about to push the button, you'd have no choice but to act. By 1983, this distrust had reached a boiling point. With the US and Soviets locked in a state of perpetual suspicion, each convinced the other's itchy finger hovered over the launch codes. Petrov's role was to spot the spark before it became a firestorm, reporting any attack to superiors who'd retaliate within minutes, ensuring mutual doom. When the siren screamed and the screen lit up with 5 incoming missiles, the context was clear. This could be the end. His orders demanded instant action, but the gravity of MAD loomed large. Act too rashly, and he'd ignite a war that couldn't be undone. Hesitate, and he might miss the chance to strike back. In that bunker, amid Cold War paranoia, Petrov held the fate of billions, a lone man caught in a machine-driven dance of destruction. Pause for a moment and support the channel by liking and subscribing. Now, let's dive back into this amazing story. On September 26, 1983, as the early warning system in a Soviet bunker shrieked about 5 incoming US missiles, Stanislav Petrov stood at a crossroads that could have ended the world. But his gut told him to pause. A lieutenant colonel in the Soviet Air Defense Forces, Petrov was no ordinary soldier. His civilian education in IT from Kiev Higher Engineering Radio Technical College set him apart from his military-trained peers, giving him a skeptic's eye toward the shiny new detection tech. That night, the Cold War's tension was palpable. US-Soviet relations were a powder keg, and the doctrine of mutually assured destruction meant any launch would trigger a devastating counterstrike. When the siren blared and the computer flagged 5 intercontinental ballistic missiles, Petrov's orders were explicit: reported up the chain instantly, setting off a retaliatory barrage within minutes. But he froze, not from fear alone, but from a nagging doubt. 5 missiles? It didn't add up. A real US first strike designed to overwhelm and obliterate would rain hundreds, not a measly handful. Plus, the system, still in its infancy, processed the verification checks suspiciously fast, a red flag to Petrov's technical mind. His colleagues, steeped in military obedience, might have trusted the machine implicitly, but Petrov's outsider perspective screamed caution. Ignoring protocol, he labeled the alert a false alarm, a gamble rooted in logic and instinct rather than certainty. He was right. High-altitude clouds had tricked the satellite into seeing missiles where none existed. Had he followed orders, his superiors might have launched, sparking a US response, and the dominoes of nuclear war would have fallen. Much like the chilling scenario in 99 Red Balloons, a song from that very year about a mistaken trigger ending the world. Petrov's call averted that fate, but he didn't know for sure until the minutes passed without impact. Sweating, he later admitted, "I knew perfectly well that nobody would be able to correct my mistake if I had made one." His hunch saved billions. Yet the incident stayed buried until the 1990s, when a Soviet general spilled the tale after the USSR's collapse. Petrov's reasoning, doubting a paltry 5-missile strike and a glitchy system, proved humanity's salvation. A quiet triumph of intellect over blind obedience. Unlike the song's fiction, this was real, and Petrov's split-second skepticism snatched us from the brink, a solitary act in a bunker that kept the Cold War from turning hot, leaving the world blissfully unaware of how close it came to ash. Stanislav Petrov's world-saving decision on September 26, 1983, didn't earn him a hero's parade, or even a pat on the back, at the time. After calling the 5-missile alert a false alarm, averting a potential nuclear holocaust, the Soviet lieutenant colonel faced neither punishment nor praise from his superiors. The incident, where sunlight on clouds fooled a satellite into signaling a U.S. strike, was swept under the rug, locked in Cold War secrecy until the Soviet Union crumbled in the 1990s. Only then did a general involved spill the story, revealing how Petrov's hunch had spared humanity from mutually assured destruction. Born in 1939 and a 1972 graduate of Kiev's engineering college, Petrov retired early from the military after his bunker stint, his nerves frayed by the weight of that night and its quiet aftermath. A nervous breakdown followed, a testament to the toll of holding the world's fate in his hands. Yet he lived on, unheralded for decades. It wasn't until the story broke that the world caught up. Suddenly, Petrov was hailed as the man who dodged doomsday. In 2004, he received 2 World Citizen Awards, among other honors, as global recognition poured in for his cool-headed skepticism that defied orders and saved billions. Tragically, Petrov's tale ended on May 19, 2017, when he died of pneumonia at 77, his legacy finally cemented, but his life marked by the strain of unsung heroism. The near miss stayed hidden while he lived quietly, the planet's population oblivious to how close they'd come to annihilation, 5 Phantom missiles nearly igniting a war that'd leave no winners. His death closed a chapter on a story that screams for awareness. One man's choice, buried for years, was why we're still here. Today, nuclear threats may feel less imminent, with smarter systems and protocols, but Petrov's tale lingers as a chilling what-if, a reminder of unseen forces and the fragility of peace. From a bunker's tension to belated accolades, Stanislav Petrov's life proves that sometimes the world doesn't end not because of grand plans, but because one person dared to question a machine and trust their gut. This was just one of many incredible moments in history. Subscribe now and hit the bell icon so you never miss another one.